in this very important and special part of Soren Kierkegaard's life and writings. It's about a very special topic called fear and tremblance. And so this is one of my favorite parts as well, because he takes us really deeper into some issues that we do not imagine. It's like you're sitting afterwards saying, wow, what is it I'm reading about? And how did this man really get the ideas? It's not so easy to grasp, but at the same time very understandable and special in many ways. But first of all, let's look at his life in those years in between 1941 and 43, where he publishes Fear and Tremblance. He has a kind of more quietish life, as they say in this modern slang English. He lived for 4 years in Nørregade in Copenhagen, and these years were very special for him because he wrote many of his manuscripts there. He had an apartment on the first floor where he often were seen walking forth and back in the night in his apartment, writing or thinking. Sometimes he could have several manuscripts open at the same time. If he got an idea, he would rush and write it so it doesn't disappear or go away from him. And he had a lot of lights and candles lit, and he was so scared of fire that he always checked and double-checked meticulously that everything was under control, and he didn't leave any matches with a slight glow in it, so any fire could erupt in any time. And at that time, it was like today, like at every time, the danger of fire and the fear of fire between humans is one of the biggest things. And so he was very meticulous in that issue, also because many of the town's houses were very close to each other. They talk about the fires that erupted in Copenhagen time before his birth, and it's called like it spread from house to house because there were the houses were so close to each other and all built of the same type of wood, and so it was very easy for the fire to just burn through. And so the fear of fire was something to be taken very, very seriously. And still today, even though we have a lot better equipment and divisions to rush out and try to put the fire out. So it is maybe the most important glow for humanity, at the same time the most dangerous one. Anyhow, he used to walk and talk to people as usual in these years, and he used to take sometimes the carriage with the horses, let someone drive him all the way out to outside the gates of Copenhagen, and maybe a day's trip or two, where he could just have some kind of refreshment in his head, leaving town and people and going out in nature to get this kind of inspiration and peace, calmfulness that he needed. And at the same time, he could be away for the whole day, so he would prefer to sleep in a place, a guest house on the road back. And he had always been working on these projects of his in these years. On the surface, when he met people, he was the magister, the theologian, the priest who once a year or twice a year published the enlightening speeches about Christianity and faith. And that's all. He was a bit awkward in the ideas of many people, but still the person they liked to talk to. And he spent a lot of his inheritance from his father. They had a great amount of money on his needs, so he went out eating almost every day, dining somewhere outside his house, and refreshing himself with drinks, and not so he got drunk, but a glass of wine is mentioned, and so he could use some tobacco and sit and talk to people over the tables and spend long evenings sitting out dining, because he usually worked at night, so he went home back and lit up all these lights so he could work and jump from manuscript to manuscript or clear his head around some phrases and ways to say things. And sometimes he used a lot of time just finding the right phrase for the right in the right place. So he was really careful what to use of words many times. That's why those who had studied his language could see that he has used some refined words in several places. It wasn't all just random talk like I'm doing right now. And so when they later looked at his life after he died in 1855, they could see that he had used almost all the fortune that he had been given by his father, and he had spent it on beautiful cut clothes. He had used it on food and things he liked, all these driving trips, and at some time he tried riding horses, but he didn't really succeed in that. He was cramped sitting on that horse. And there's a funny scene where one of his friends remember him talking about his his education in riding horses. He went to take a course in a manner, and he was always like stiff trying to remember the instructions of how to use that horse. So he went very quickly away from that and stayed with the coach, driving these long trips outside of Copenhagen walls, and enjoying nature like he enjoyed his walks in the town almost every day, stopping up to talk to people and to be with them. Then at night he went to write. So beside all that, he had the duties in the church where he went each Sunday, especially in the Frühkirche, and he went to listen mostly to the Bishop Münster, that was his priest from the time of confirmation. And he also at one time met Regina, the girl that he by force pushed away from him, as we talked about in the last time and the time before. It's a bit of a sad story and kept following him all his life, that choice. And some of the things he wrote always circled back to that issue, not speaking specifically about himself all the time, but speaking about the choice of pushing someone away. And this is what's going to be the topic in Fear and Trembleness, but much deeper, in really much deeper sense. This book is really amazing in that leap of faith that you have to take to get from being the aesthetic to the ethic to become that truly religious, passionate person that he was seeking and to understand. Not seeking to be, he was the resignation. I will get back to that in a moment, but it is like once in this church he met Regina, and he says in his diary, well, she nodded to me, and I don't know if she was like begging me or giving me forgiveness in that nod, but anyhow, I could feel she was compassionate. And something in me, I had sat in a place where I wouldn't be spotted mostly, but she discovered it, and I hoped she wouldn't. And now 1.5 years of sufferings has been lost. All my attempts to, I think he was trying to say, to push her away. Well, I let my eyes stay on her, and she nodded 2 times, and I shook my head. That meant, well, you have to give it up. So she nodded again, and I nodded very friendly, trying to say, you will keep my love. And so imagine that scene. He's sitting in the church, no talk. The priest is maybe speaking or performing the rituals, and she is nodding to him, like saying, could we talk, maybe, like that, or I forgive you. He didn't really clearly understood the message at first. But then when he nodded back, he looked back at her, she nodded again, 2 times. And that's many times like saying, should we try again, or would you accept me, or should we talk, or something like that. And he shook his head, no. And she understood that, so she nodded once more again, and he nodded once more back in friendly gesture to say, well, he's trying to tell her, you will keep my love, I love you still. And he says in his diary some other place, I think I loved her much higher than she loved me. Well, that can be a troublesome thing to understand, since he pushed her away. in the head of many people and persons, it won't be easy to understand how you can love this woman so high and then give her up for your manuscripts and for your writing and for that other type of life that you had, or because you were uncertain or insecure. And he had many times written about these things, then torn the pages out of his diaries, as the people who have been like studying him, they have been speaking about. So it's not easy to understand. He kept it a secret. It was not really visible what kind of reason lay behind all this. It stayed a mystery in his life and afterwards. Well, anyhow, after these situations, especially the meeting with Regina again and again and again, because when he went to Fru Kirke to sit and listen to the preachers on Sunday, and his old priest, well, she knew he would come there, and so sometimes she could show up. And in periods he was shocked, and he was like unable to put his feelings at rest. So what he did was, in the end, accept that he was torn between that love and between his decision that this wasn't to be. And he also learned that in that period she was going to marry that guy, Fritz, and got engaged to him. So that tore him up even more. But anyhow, he started concentrating back on his projects and writings, and started finishing a manuscript on two upbuilding speeches. It's like soul upbuilding, moral upbuilding speeches. This is how religion goes about explaining itself, by the agents, like the priests, the people who represent the faith and understand it, can tell the people about it and upbuild their morals and their understanding. And that's a very important part of having a faith or a religion, to be able to do that. And so he kept his focus on that. So he wasn't that crazy philosopher who just wanted to philosophize over life. He kept his attitude, his role as the magister in theology, in his appearance when he met people and in his writings, not because he was deceiving himself. I think he believed truly in what he wrote and that it had a meaning, but he was just seeing it as not really digging into the depth of the human psyche. And so at some point he realized he had to get away of that once more. And so in May of 1843, he went back to Berlin again, and the same routine. He liked the routine, walking unter the Linden and hearing the same music and going to the same places. And he could enjoy that type of walk and being where he was at once again. And he wrote back to his very dear friend Emil Boesen that, well, I'm busy again, the pen is flowering, I can write, I'm beautiful, I do things, and I'm working so hard and up to 2, 3 o'clock in the night. And so he worked a lot in that period. But he didn't stay there for long this time. He was there just for maybe 10, 20 days. And then he came back to Copenhagen with a lot of ideas and writings that in many ways pushed that the thoughts about Regina away. And so he could focus on what he wanted to bring forward of philosophical writings under the same pseudonyms or new pseudonyms as before. So he didn't want really to get the connection between him and that author. He wanted to stay neutral, maybe of several reasons. The critique, on one hand, maybe he would have been very shallow to understand and take in that critique. On the other hand, it could also be like, if you write something and people is not associating that with you, maybe they will take it in a different manner than all these presumptions that people can have, saying, oh, this writer or that person, okay, then maybe I will read it in a special way when I know who it is that I'm reading from, instead of just reading it for its content. And so he worked a lot, and he in the same year, 1843, he published 3 books, 2 pseudonyms and 1 under his own name, the 2 upbuilding speeches in Christian morals and manners and faith under his own name. And so October 16th, also 2 other manuscripts were published. on C.A. Ritzel's publishing house in Copenhagen. It was a known publishing house at that time as well as today. And he made a literal hat trick, as they say, if we're going to use something from football. So beside these speeches, he published Fear and Tremblance and then The Repetition. And I'm only going to speak about Fear and Tremblance in this one because it's going to fill our heads. It's surely something that is not easy to get your mind around. Here, he's trying to pick up where he left in Fear and Tremblance from where he left in Either Or. And if you remember from the last talk, that he in Either Or was showing us the ideas of these two persons, A and B, and that Victor Eremita reading their correspondence, and then a third person enters the scene, speaking in a more religious voice, not really that aesthetic voice, neither the ethic voice, but a third voice, and he wants to pick up from there. But this time he takes it much deeper. I was very surprised first time I read this. It was really like really getting an enlightenment into my head, and an understanding that always had with me as a religious person, but I really loved the way he expressed it, and just made my passion for the reading and for him much stronger. And so he's picking up, well, the ethical guy, as we knew from last time. He want the compassion, the duty, living in that tradition of love, the duty to the love and the love for the duty, and not only living that superfluous life of shifting from place to place and thing with thing to get the pleasures out of life. He wants to be that duty person who sticks to his world and morals and considerations. And that's what gives the ethical man or person a deeper view on life, that he is not self-centered, but centered around the duty that he has in life towards others that loves him or that he loves. And that's another stage altogether. And that the choice between these two does not stop there. He takes us a bit deeper. He wants to see, okay, if I have this ethical type of life, where does the religious life really comes in and lie? Because the ethical person can be religious, even though he's not on that depth that you want to speak about now. And the same with that aesthetic. He's on the surface, the shallow person, not really fulfilling his duties. But that does not take the ability for him to be religious. But in his idea, to be truly religious is something he want to dig into here. And he uses a guy in that story called Johannes the Silentio. That means Johannes the Silent, out of silence, because he's asking a big question he's not able to answer. And so it's like, I want to believe, but the rest is silence. I want to ask this big question, but the rest is silence. And his big question in this case is, well, if you are a truly religious person, what are your ethical dilemmas? Which limits do you have when adhering to the ethics of life? Ethics, it's like saying to yourself, my conscience does not allow me to do that because I wouldn't that others did that to me. And it's like saying, well, the good is what I would like to make as a general law that everybody would follow. You wouldn't make theft, general theft, a law, because somebody will come and steal you in the end. And so you, by human nature, you would like to have the rules of the ethical things that can make life human. And so being that ethical person, what are your limits, and what kind of ideas would you accept and so reject? Where would you stop, in other words? And so he asked the questions: can you sacrifice a human for a cause? Can you do something without really understanding the reason? And he circles here around two very fascinating stories. The first one is the story of Iphigenia with her father Agamemnon from Euripides' tragedy Iphigenia in Aulis. It's about her father who is king, and he wants to to win the battle, and has his fleet waiting for the winds, but the winds will never come, and so he has to ask the favor of the goddess of the winds, Artemis, to help him, and she promised to help him if he would sacrifice his daughter Iphigenia, and so he goes to do. The other story is from Abraham sacrificing Isaac on the altar, as according to the Old Testament, but also that belief went on in both Christianity and Islam. And as I mentioned before, well, Islam has the same story, but with Ishmael instead of Abraham. And that type of faith Abraham is showing has made him, well, the father of monotheistic, deep, passionate faith. He became the absolute figure of the one who could just adhere to God's voice and orders, because he know God is of the good and can never do otherwise. But how could he make himself go and sacrifice his son on the altar for God without any real reason? And the difference between the two stories is that Agamemnon, that king, had a duty to his people. He had to cross that river or that sea, while Abraham didn't have a reason for taking his son, that came also very late in his life, and without telling his wife Sarah, and without telling Isaac himself either, according to that story, or that type of story. And so the dilemma is that the king is torn between a duty to his people and his daughter, very beautiful Iphigenia, who understands that duty the father has, and then steps forward and tells him, well, I'm ready to sacrifice myself voluntarily. And so he goes to sacrifice, and in one story he actually do sacrifice her, and she is lost, and that's a tragedy. But the winds come and they get over. And in another version, the most popular known one is that, well, she got saved by the goddess Artemis in the end. She stops him from doing that. She just wanted to see whether he would do it or not, and then helps them with the winds, and he gets to keep his daughter, who would become a goddess and a priestess in the temple of the gods later. And that's a good position to be in, according to that old type of mythology. But in Abraham's condition, well, where is the ethical dilemma? There is nothing. And why is this order coming from the good God, who will not ever order anything bad or evil to his servants and lovers? What's going on here? It's ununderstandable. It's like beyond any comprehension. And this is what he's really circling about, reaching all the way into the depth that you go from believing, but by believing, you also actually say, it's a paradox, because there is no rational reason for me to believe. Something I don't understand, I reject. But by believing, you're going in the opposite direction than your mind is telling you, than your rationality would give you allowance to. And in that sense, you are taking that move, that leap of faith, into the hands of the God in deep passion. Isn't that beautiful? And this is what he keeps circling about and talking in great length about in fear and tremblance. And so this guy, Johannes de Salento, has to discuss this big fear and tremblance that is on the edge of the ethical by three given questions. First of all, is there a suspension from the ethic? Can you, because of a target that you have, suspend the ethics? It's called teleological suspension. It's when you say, I have a target I would like to reach, but that target is ethical, must be ethical, and has to stay ethical. This is the way of the ethical life. But can I suspend that ethical target for another ununderstandable target? And the second question he wants to answer is there a duty to God that is totally absolute? No conditions and no limitations and no reasoning. You just give yourself into God in a way that is totally absolute. He can do with you what he likes. This is the way you prove you are really God's love and servant, and the person who is compassionate to that God. This is the second question. Is there an absolute duty to that God? And the third one, was it ethically defendable that Abraham didn't actually tell neither Isaac nor his mother that he was going to do this, because he was ordered to do so. And he circles around this, trying to answer these questions. And what he gets to is that Agamemnon, well, whatever he will do something wrong. If he sacrifices his daughter, this is something he will feel has been wrong in a certain ethical way. But he has to prioritize and give the priority to his people that has to cross the sea, and there is no winds, and so he needs the favor of the winds, and he understands this is not easy, but he has a practical dilemma. So whatever he does, he also does something wrong. And that's a real ethical dilemma in life, that you can maybe go and sacrifice one person for a cause or for the group. So you leave one behind in order to save the rest, or you sacrifice one to save the rest. And if you keep that one, well, you lose the rest. So which one would you choose? What's your duty? And that's very understandable, even though it's not easy at all and can give many doubts and troubles in life. But when we look at Agamemnon and Iphigenia, it's the duty we understand. We follow them, and we can see that this dilemma is impossible, but there is a choice in it. Different it is with Abraham, who has no practical and ethical reason to do as he does, to listen to God's word. He could be asking, why should I do this? And so it's like there is a quality in his faith that is unseen. There is something about Abraham's understanding that seems absurd. It's not only a paradox. It's a paradox that's not even within the limits of reasoning. Like when we look at Agamemnon and Iphigenia, you can somehow, your mind can understand it, even though your heart rejects it. And here you cannot even understand it, neither with the mind or the heart, saying, why should God order him to do so in the first place? This is absurd, this is rejectable, this is not something you're gonna do and act on. But this is exactly what your very passionate and deep religious ways will do to you, and put you in the space to understand. You will be so totally passionate to your faith in God, and in that lovable source of being that you are believing in, and in his goodness, that you will go beyond the limits of both your heart and mind. That faith is the way to the true religious passion that he is seeking in life. And so it's transcending. It's a kind of passion that will make you transcend your own being, the way you are, and the way you act, and the way you think. It's totally irrational, it's unbelievable, it's a paradox, and he understands that. And so that passion of belief is beyond the rational understanding and beyond the ethical limits. And that's why Abraham becomes the knight of the faith, of the monotheistic faith, that he believes and trusts in God more than he trusts his own reason or his ethical position. It is God who knows best, and with God we're always wrong, as he ends saying in Either Or, the book from the year before. And so Abraham has this deep, passionate faith that's so much in him that he's always ready to listen to that voice of God, even though it seems absurd. And in that way, he's really totally surrendering everything in him and everything that's given him as a human to that God. And that's an impossible position for 99% of the people. But he said there are few who are like different in that manner, and not really according to the most. Most of us would really just tremble and fear and fall back. We will. And he say, well, that Johannes de Salentio, he say, I'm not sure I'm one of these who could have done this. And so if you imagine Johannes de Salentio as himself, Soren Kirkegaard, the person who really speaks behind these authors, he's really saying, well, I can see it for my eye, and I can understand how this Abraham had to do this. But I'm not sure I would have taken the same way and having the possibility. So I am resignating myself from that situation, knowing that if I got the possibility, I'm not sure I'm able to go all the way. And so to take that leap of faith into the faith is very risky and dangerous. This is what he somehow gets to understand about himself in the way he's talking. And so to answer his three questions, he goes back to that and say, well, can a certain target take away another ethical limit? And he says yes. If you have a target that's bigger than the ethical limit, it can actually suspend it. And the second one, do you have a duty that is absolute towards God? And he answers yes, in every way, because it's absurd. And because belief in itself seems so absurd and paradoxical that you have this duty that is absolute. And the third one, is it defendable ethically? To look at Abraham as a knight of faith, why did he not even tell his family about it? And he says, yes, it is defendable, because he's adhering to God's word without any questions, knowing totally, in total trust, that this God will never do anything bad. He's the God of goodness. And that's how you show it, by being ready to sacrifice the most dearest to you, put away your mind and heart and everything that's calling you back from that, because God would never, ever do anything to harm you. And at the same time, he is he's a person that is like outside the limits of understanding for most other people. So he's saying, well, it's not about suspending the ethical all the time. You cannot just go do what you want because you see yourself above the ethic and you put your own priorities. This is not what he's talking about here at all. He's not calling people to go outside the limits of the law and the ethical duties they have. He's just saying that these ethical duties can sometimes be limited to something that makes them suspendable because something bigger has arisen. So it's always in that special condition you have to look at this. But with Abraham, it is total surrender. It is the person who's really on another level altogether that we cannot reach. And so with that passion of faith, Johannes de Salentio, he says, well, I am in resignation here. And I am not sure if I had the possibility I would be the man for it. And that's a beautiful way also to see the limits of yourself and ourselves. Because when we talk about this, it seems easy, but to stand in it, that's something I hope no human will have to experience again. But that's the same movement that also made Abraham so special and made him the father of faith and made him the person whose inheritance and family and ideas and his belief will go on forever to the end of times, because he was in a very special way that special person. And so in that way he takes us on this journey speaking about these two figures. And I think I would stop here, because this needs a lot of thinking and dwelling, and sometimes you just need to just just relax from it and look how deep he went in understanding these aspects of the ethical life and the aesthetical life, the ethical life, and the life of the religious. And so the beauty about him is that he lived it all. He was on all three levels through his life. He was like a carbon paper for this type of living. He had lived with the aesthetical people, that drunken person from the court and the other persons around him. He's been in the arms of people who only lived on that surface and had always to silence their own ideas and minds with noise. And then he lived with the ethical people. They were all around him, the bourgeoisie and the people from the better classes that went up in rules and law and order and had to uphold it and keep it for ethical reasons. And then he lived with the religious people whom he saw, well, only discussing theology without really getting the passion out of it. He will get back to that later in his life and become very burning in his passion of trying to break through in that manner, but I'm not sure that he got understood, but well, he tried at least. And so he saw them as a group of people who was taking a Sunday trip and discussing and talking and fighting and running their horses to death just to get to the place they're going on that Sunday trip, look at each other and go back home. So there's nothing to it. And so he found his call. He says, because I couldn't understand people, I went to try and understand myself, and that is more difficult to do. So he had also a kind of pity on himself, that because he couldn't just relate to life as an aesthetic, as an ethic, and just live it, he had to turn inward to the most sacred and closed source of everything that's happening, himself, and to try and understand it in depth and see where is my ethical ideas, where have I been the aesthetic, how is it to live in this and that way. And so what about the religious? Is that a deeper layer? In his opinion, it is, definitely. It's not the superstition we are believed to think today in these times where things are turned upside down. It is the most deepest layer of connecting with yourself, because you are up against something you don't understand. And when you stand up to something you don't understand, well, you can just shut your eyes in denial, or you can open your heart and say, well, there is something more than I can realize. And this is where the leap of faith comes, and this is where you give yourself up to that which is bigger and deeper, and you just don't understand it. You can't get your head around it, but that's the idea of God. But something in you tells you it's there, and he also speaks about that. Say it's something that it just is there in you. It's nothing you just can rationalize yourself around. And so when he comes to the ethical choices, he can see that sometimes you are in dilemmas that need a difficult choice. That's not easy. And when you take that choice, you can see that you have made that choice with another sacrifice. You will do something wrong no matter what you do. If you don't do it, you are in some way letting yourself down and letting the others down. And if you do it, you're letting someone down, and also part of you and your ethical limits. So you see, it's not easy, but it stays a practical dilemma, while he went all the way saying, whoa, if you look at that kind of dilemmas, well, who can surpass Abraham and the way he was asked to sacrifice? This was beyond anything that we have ever seen or understood by dilemmas. And today it will be called fanaticism, a kind of fanatic person. At the same time, Kierkegaard was very much against people who went to try to die a death of martyrdom because they were tired of life or bored or just wanted to show that they had sacrificed themselves for the faith. He was against that. He wanted people to live. He said it's the living in faith that counts, and not going to sacrifice yourself as a martyr for your faith. And are you truly doing that? He was very suspect on people who just went to sacrifice themselves, saying, I'm doing it for my religion or my faith. That fanaticism that goes and destroys others. This is ethically wrong, because when you go killing or doing something out of the way, spilling your own blood even, well, what's the ethical reason in that? And what's the ethical dilemma in that you are standing in? Most of the time it's a run away from life, or a kind of boredom, or whatever people want to achieve by it. But it wasn't like that kind of fanaticism he wants, even though this is what we see Abraham is doing. He's sacrificing, he's killing, he's going all the way to the most forbidden thing that you could get around to do, killing another human, a child, not only a child, your child, and the child God gave you as an old man, and gave him to you with a promise. And doesn't make sense at all. So what is it God wants? Is he taking everything away, or is this a test of my ego? Maybe Abraham had these thoughts and said to himself, well, God has given me all this, and now he's taking it. It's like Job, got everything, lost everything, got everything back, but after many, many years. And it's like a test of, is your love for God deeper than anything that has been given you? Are you a true believer in other sense? And he says, well, Johannes de Silencio, well, I cannot get to the limit and threshold of that. Given the possibility to act on that, I will resignate. And so he knew his own limits as well, and could see that it was not really at all easy for him to get to that part. Anyhow, we are in 1843. He has around 12 years to live, and he has a lot of books to publish and ideas to tell about. And so I have a lot to speak about as well. I love this. I really enjoy it. It gives me a lot of joy and refreshment, this book of Soren Kirkegaard. I have the whole series, and it's been with me for many years, and so I really like getting back to this, and now finding this way of channeling it out. It's been a source of great joy for me. Hopefully someone out there will let the guiding star show them the way, and hopefully get something out of this if they are finding this out there somewhere. Otherwise, I'm very happy that it's such a beautiful thing to keep getting back to. So next time we're going to talk about several of his books, starting with the book that was published at the same time as the other. That's crazy, the amount of work he has been doing at the same time, and with very great qualities. It's not second-hand work at all. It's called The Repetition, and we're going to look into that as well as some other of his writings that got published later after that.